Have you ever felt like money is always just out of reach, no matter how hard you work or how much you try? What if I told you that the very act of trying is actually pushing it further away, and that there are 3 simple words you can say every single morning that completely reverse this pattern? You're here right now, reading these words, and I want you to know something important. This isn't a coincidence. You didn't accidentally click on this video. Something deeper inside you has been searching, reaching, quietly calling out for a shift in your financial reality, and the universe just responded. That restless feeling you've had, that sense that there must be another way, that knowing that you're meant for more than constantly struggling with money, that's what brought you here. And what you're about to discover might completely change the way you understand abundance. Florence Scovel Shinn, one of the most powerful teachers of prosperity consciousness, revealed something that most people completely miss. She taught that your financial reality isn't created by what you do, but by who you are being. It's not about hustling harder, manifesting longer, or visualizing more intensely. It's about assuming a new identity, one where money flows to you naturally, effortlessly, consistently. And the moment you step into that identity, everything shifts. The opportunities change. The people who show up in your life change. Even the way money itself responds to you begins to change. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Now here's what most people don't understand about attracting money. They think it's about repeating affirmations they don't believe or visualizing things they secretly doubt will ever happen. They're trying to convince themselves from a place of lack. And that energy of lack is exactly what keeps recreating the same financial patterns over and over again. Has this ever happened to you? You say the affirmations, you do the vision boards, you think the positive thoughts, but at the end of the month, your bank account tells the same old story? That's because you're still operating from the old identity, the one that chases money instead of receiving it. And this is where those 3 words come in. These aren't just any words, they're a key that unlocks a doorway inside you, a doorway to a state of being where receiving becomes natural, expected, inevitable. When you speak these words in those first precious moments after waking, before your logical mind has fully activated, before the doubts creep in, before you remember yesterday's limitations, something profound happens at the identity level. Stay with me here, because what I'm about to share with you isn't theory. This is the actual mechanism that governs how money moves in your life, and once you understand it, right now, in this very moment, I want you to do something with me. Take a slow, deep breath. Let it fill your lungs completely, and as you exhale, allow all the noise from today to soften. The worries about bills, the anxiety about tomorrow, the fear that keeps whispering, "What if it doesn't work?" Just let it loosen its grip for a moment. Because here's what's actually happening as you do this. The version of you that doubts, that second guesses, that carries the weight of past financial disappointments is beginning to dissolve. It's not being forced away. It's simply making space for something far more powerful to take its place. This is the hidden truth that Florence Scovel Shinn discovered and taught throughout her life. She called it the state of the wish fulfilled. And it's not some mystical concept that only works for special people. It's a shift in consciousness that's available to you right now, in this exact moment. The instant you pressed play on this video, you activated something. You entered a doorway. And once you step through that doorway and genuinely assume this new state of being, the world around you has absolutely no choice but to reorganize itself to match what's happening inside you. Think about it this way. Your current financial reality is a perfect mirror of the identity you've been holding. If you've been living as someone who has to struggle for money, who never quite has enough, who feels like abundance is for other people but not for you, then that's exactly what shows up in your bank account, in your opportunities, in the offers that come your way. But the moment you shift internally, the moment you step into the identity of someone who receives easily and naturally, everything on the outside begins to shift too. Money starts moving differently. Opportunities that were invisible suddenly become obvious. People respond to you in new ways. Ideas drop into your mind at the perfect time. Solutions appear that you couldn't have planned or predicted. If this resonated with you, go ahead and subscribe. Everything I share here is designed to give you real, practical tools for transforming your relationship with money and abundance. This isn't manifestation in the way most people teach it, where you're desperately trying to attract something from outside yourself. This is identity, transformation. This is about becoming the person for whom receiving is natural, normal, expected. And the 3 words I'm going to share with you are the fastest way to make that shift, because they bypass all the mental resistance and go straight to the core of who you're deciding to be. Now, I want to go even deeper into this, because understanding the mechanism behind these 3 words is what makes them truly powerful. Most people say affirmations, but nothing changes because they're still emotionally attached to their old story. They're speaking new words with an old identity. But when you understand how your subconscious actually works, how it responds not to what you say, but to what you assume is true, everything becomes clear. Your subconscious doesn't argue with you. It doesn't question whether you deserve abundance or whether it's realistic. It simply accepts the identity you claim and begins creating evidence to support it. Write in the comments, "I am ready to receive." Because declaring it publicly shifts something inside you that private thoughts alone cannot touch. So let me ask you something. What if, starting right now, you stopped being the person who chases money and became the person who receives it? Not in some distant future when you've earned it or proven yourself worthy, but today, right now, in this exact moment. Because here's the transformation that needs to happen first. Before anything external can shift, you need to feel, deeply and genuinely, that you are already the version of yourself who receives money repeatedly, with ease, with joy, without force or strain. Not someone who's trying to become that person. Not someone who hopes to be that person someday, but someone who already is. This is where most teachings on abundance completely miss the mark. They tell you to work harder, to do more, to hustle until you break through. But Florence Scovel Shinn understood something profound about how reality actually works. She taught that you don't earn your way into abundance. You don't struggle your way into receiving. You step into a rhythm, a natural flow, where money comes to you because that's simply who you are. It's not about effort. It's about identity. It's about making a decision at such a deep level that your entire being reorganizes around it. Think about people you know who always seem to land on their feet financially. They're not necessarily smarter than you. They don't work harder than you. But somehow, opportunities find them. Money flows to them. Things just work out. What's the difference? It's not luck. It's not privilege. It's that they're operating from a completely different internal state. They've assumed the identity of someone for whom receiving is natural, and their external world reflects that assumption perfectly. And this is where the 3 words come in. These aren't just any words you repeat mindlessly hoping something magical happens. These 3 words are designed to become an anchor in your consciousness, a signal that pierces through all the mental noise and doubt and goes straight to the core of who you're deciding to be. When you speak them, especially in those first sacred moments of the morning before your rational mind fully wakes up, they land with the force of truth. They're not a wish. They're not a hope. They're a declaration. They're a statement of identity that your subconscious receives and immediately begins to act upon. What makes these words so powerful is that they create alignment between your inner world and the universe itself. They send a quiet but unmistakable signal that you are ready, that you are open, that you are no longer resisting what's already yours. And when that signal goes out clearly and consistently, the response is inevitable. Things begin to move. Doors begin to open. The right people cross your path at the right time. Ideas emerge that you couldn't have forced or planned. Your entire experience of money begins to transform from the inside out. But here's what you need to understand about how this actually works on a practical level, because knowing the mechanism behind the transformation makes all the difference in how quickly you experience results. Drop a comment below with just one word: ready, because that simple act of declaring your readiness amplifies the shift that's already happening inside you. Your subconscious mind operates on a very specific principle that most people never learn. It doesn't distinguish between what's happening externally and what you're consistently claiming internally. It takes whatever identity you declare as truth and immediately begins creating circumstances, thoughts, decisions, and opportunities that match that declaration. This is the hidden mechanism behind every sudden breakthrough, every unexpected windfall, every moment when money seems to appear out of nowhere. It's not random. It's your subconscious responding to the identity you've been holding, whether consciously or unconsciously. So when I tell you to let these words settle into your being, I mean really let them sink in deeper than just intellectual understanding. The words are simple. I am the version of myself that receives, not I want to be, or I'm trying to become, or someday I'll be. But I am. Present tense. Already true. Already real. This is your doorway. This is the exact moment where transformation becomes possible because you're no longer positioning yourself as someone waiting for abundance to arrive. You're stepping into the identity of someone for whom receiving is already natural, already happening, already part of who you are. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that the word is incredibly powerful, but only when it's backed by the feeling of truth. You can say anything you want, but if there's no conviction behind it, if your emotional state contradicts what you're declaring, nothing shifts. That's why so many people repeat affirmations for years and see no change. They're speaking words their heart doesn't believe. But when you make this declaration from a place of genuine assumption, when you feel it as truth even before the evidence appears, something remarkable happens. Your entire energy changes. Your decisions change. The way you move through the world changes. And money, which is simply energy responding to energy, begins moving toward you in ways that feel effortless. If something shifted for you today, take a second to hit that like button. It helps this message reach others who need it and reinforces your own commitment to this shift. This isn't about convincing yourself of something false. It's about recognizing something that's already true at a deeper level. You are capable of receiving. You are worthy of receiving. The universe isn't withholding abundance from you. You've just been operating from an identity that wasn't aligned with receiving. And now you're making a different choice. You're claiming a different truth. And the moment you do that, the moment you speak it and feel it and embody it, money recognizes that shift instantly. It's like you've suddenly become visible on a frequency you were previously blocking. Let me show you exactly how this plays out in practical terms, because understanding the journey from declaration to manifestation removes all the confusion and doubt that usually derails people before they see results. If this resonates with you, type in the comments, I receive. Saying it publicly creates an energetic commitment that private thoughts alone cannot match. Here's something most people don't realize about Florence Scovel Shinn's work. Over the decades, her teachings have been watered down, repackaged, and softened to the point where the original power has almost been lost. Everyone quotes her, but very few people actually understand what she was really saying. So I want you to approach her message right now as if you're hearing it for the very first time, with fresh ears and an open mind. Because when you strip away all the misinterpretations and the diluted versions that have been passed around, something incredibly pure emerges. Something sharp. Something that strikes directly at the core of your identity and has the power to transform it completely. Shinn wasn't teaching positive thinking in the way most people understand it today. She wasn't telling you to paste a smile on your face and hope for the best. She wasn't suggesting you repeat pretty words while secretly doubting they'll ever come true. What she taught was far more radical, far more confronting, and far more effective than any of that. She taught that you literally become what you accept as true of yourself. And once you genuinely accept something at that deep internal level, nothing in your outer world can resist it. Not circumstances, not other people, not past patterns, not economic conditions, nothing. This is the revelation that changes everything. Most people are waiting for their external reality to change first so they can finally feel abundant, finally feel secure, finally feel like someone who receives. But that's backwards. That's why they stay stuck for years, sometimes decades, repeating the same financial struggles over and over. The shift has to happen inside you first. The acceptance has to happen first. The decision about who you are has to happen first. And then, and only then, does the outer world begin to reorganize itself to match that internal truth. Think about the times in your life when something shifted quickly. Maybe you suddenly got a new job, or money came from an unexpected source, or an opportunity appeared that changed your trajectory. If you look back honestly, you'll probably notice that right before that external shift, something changed inside you. You made a decision. You let go of an old story. You accepted a new possibility. That internal shift is what created the opening for the external change to rush in. So when Shinn talks about speaking your word, she's not talking about wishful thinking or fantasizing. She's talking about making a declaration from such a deep place of knowing that your entire being reorganizes around it. And your 3 words, the ones you're about to fully embrace, work on exactly this principle. They're not a wish. They're not a hope. They're a command to your subconscious, an acceptance of a truth that already exists, waiting for you to claim it. The impact of this understanding on your financial reality is immediate and profound, but there's a specific way these words need to be used for maximum effect. Comment below, I accept this truth, because the moment you declare acceptance, you activate the very principle Shinn taught throughout her entire life. The place where most people completely lose their way on this journey is subtle but absolutely critical. They're saying all the right words. They're doing the visualizations. They're repeating affirmations every single day. But underneath all of that, deep in their emotional body, they're still identifying as someone who lacks. They're still carrying the feeling of not enough. They're imagining wealth as something that exists out there, somewhere separate from them, something they need to reach for, chase down, or somehow pull into their reality. And because they're speaking abundance from a foundation of scarcity, nothing actually shifts. The words have no power because the identity hasn't changed. This is the hidden trap that keeps people cycling through the same patterns for years. They think the problem is that they're not doing enough affirmations, or they're not visualizing hard enough, or they haven't found the right technique yet. But the real issue is that they're trying to create change from the wrong state. They're operating from lack and hoping it will somehow produce abundance. It's like trying to drive forward while the car is still in reverse. No matter how hard you press the gas, you're not going to get where you want to go. You are now shifting into an entirely different understanding. This isn't about doing more. It's about being different. It's about recognizing that there is no distance between you and what you desire. None. Florence Scovel Shinn's real formula was never about begging the universe to bring you something. It was never about trying to manipulate energy or force circumstances to change. It was about stepping into the state where the change is already complete, where receiving is already happening, where abundance is already your reality, not in some future moment, but right now. Think about what that actually means. If there's no gap to cross, no distance to travel, no waiting period required, then what you desire is already accessible to you in this moment. The only thing standing between you and the experience of that abundance is the decision to claim it as true. The decision to stop identifying as someone who lacks and start embodying the identity of someone who receives. That's it. That's the entire transformation. And when you make that decision from a place of genuine knowing, when you feel it in your body as truth rather than hope, the external world begins conforming to that internal reality with astonishing speed. This is why the 3 words you're learning work so powerfully. They collapse the distance. They eliminate the gap. They bring the future state into the present moment through the simple act of declaring identity. But there's a specific timing to when these words need to be spoken for them to have their deepest impact. Right below. There is no distance, because declaring this publicly reinforces the truth that what you seek is already within your reach. There's a moment that separates people who experience consistent financial breakthroughs from those who stay stuck in the same patterns year after year. It's not intelligence, it's not education, it's not even hard work. It's understanding this one crucial principle. The state comes first, the evidence follows. Never the other way around. Most people are waiting for their bank account to change before they'll allow themselves to feel abundant. They're waiting for the promotion, the client, the opportunity to show up before they'll step into the identity of someone who receives. But that's exactly backwards, and it's why they stay trapped in waiting mode indefinitely. The moment you genuinely assume, I am the one who receives, something shifts at the deepest level of your consciousness. You stop waiting for proof. You stop looking for permission from your circumstances. You stop needing external validation before you claim your new identity. Instead, you start generating evidence from the inside out. Your decisions change because you're making them from a different state. Your attention shifts because you're noticing different things. Your energy transforms because you're no longer carrying the weight of lack. And the world, which is always responding to who you're being, begins presenting you with circumstances that match this new identity. This is the hidden key that Florence Scovel Shinn understood completely. Every single financial breakthrough you will ever experience in your entire life begins as an internal acceptance first. It starts as a private decision, a subtle but absolutely undeniable shift in who you know yourself to be. You don't announce it to the world. You don't need anyone else to validate it. You simply accept it as true within yourself. And once that acceptance settles into your being, once it becomes part of your identity rather than just a nice idea, the world around you rearranges itself with surprising speed. I've seen this happen countless times. Someone makes this internal shift, this quiet decision about who they are, and within days or weeks, opportunities they couldn't have predicted start appearing. Money shows up from unexpected sources. People reach out at exactly the right moment. Ideas drop into their awareness that change everything. But here's what you need to understand. None of that external movement happened because they worked harder or did more. It happened because they shifted who they were being, and reality responded to that shift. So the question becomes, how do you create that internal acceptance? How do you make that shift so complete that your subconscious has no choice but to reorganize everything around it? That's where the power of morning becomes absolutely essential. Drop a comment. The state comes first. Saying this out loud cements the principle into your consciousness in a way that silent agreement cannot. When that internal shift happens, when you genuinely step into the identity of someone who receives, the response from the world around you is almost immediate. It might not look dramatic at first, but if you pay attention, you'll notice things start moving. Income streams that were closed suddenly open. Ideas that were fuzzy become crystal clear. People who can help you appear at exactly the right moment. And those moments that other people call luck or coincidence start clustering around you in ways that feel too perfect to be random. What once felt impossible, what you used to struggle with for months or years, suddenly becomes strangely natural, easy, obvious. You'll start noticing it soon. The shift is already happening inside you as you listen to these words. But here's the critical part. Before any of that external movement can fully manifest, something inside you has to move first. That internal transformation, that decision about who you are, has to happen with absolute clarity. And this is exactly why the 3 words I'm about to reveal to you are so powerful. Because they're not magic. They're not a spell you're casting on the universe. They're something far more practical and far more potent than that. These 3 words are a trigger. They're a key that instantly snaps you into the financial identity that Florence Scovel Shinn actually taught. When you speak them, especially in that sacred window first thing in the morning, they bypass all your mental resistance, all your doubts, all your old stories about money, and they drop you directly into the state where receiving is natural. They're a shortcut, the fastest path into what Shinn called the feeling of the wish fulfilled, that state where you're no longer hoping or wishing or trying to make something happen. You're simply being the person for whom money flows effortlessly, naturally, consistently. Most people spend years trying to get to that state through meditation, visualization, endless affirmations, complex techniques. But these 3 words cut through all of that. They're direct, they're immediate, they're a doorway that opens the moment you speak them with genuine feeling. And once you step through that doorway, once you're operating from that state, even for a few moments each morning, your entire day unfolds differently. Your decisions come from a different place. Your energy attracts different opportunities. Your awareness notices things you would have missed before. But timing matters enormously here, because your mind operates in very specific rhythms throughout the day. And there's one particular window where these words have their deepest impact. Leave a comment saying, "I'm stepping through," because that declaration of movement activates the very doorway we're talking about right now. Right now, I want you to pause and really feel something. Not think about it, not analyze it, but genuinely feel it. You are not trying to attract money. That whole framework of trying to pull something toward you from outside yourself, that's the old paradigm, and it's exactly what keeps people stuck. What's actually happening here is far simpler and far more profound. You are remembering. You're remembering that you are already the one who receives. This isn't something you need to become. It's something you've always been, buried under layers of conditioning and old stories and fear-based thinking. Hold that feeling for a moment. Let it settle into every cell of your being. You are the receiver. Not someone who's going to be a receiver someday when conditions are right. Not someone who's working toward becoming a receiver, but someone who already is. This shift from trying to remembering changes everything, because when you're trying, you're acknowledging distance. When you're remembering, you're claiming what's already true. Now, here's what most people don't realize. There is a mechanism inside you, operating silently in the background of your consciousness, that has been shaping your entire financial life long before you ever earned your first dollar. Florence Scovel Shinn called it the state, but you can think of it as your inner command center. It's the part of you that's constantly broadcasting signals to reality, telling the world what to deliver to you, what opportunities to present, what doors to open or close. And here's the remarkable thing. This command center doesn't respond to what you consciously want. It responds to who you unconsciously believe you are. So if deep down, beneath all your hopes and wishes, you still identify as someone who struggles with money, someone who never quite has enough, someone for whom abundance is always just out of reach, then that's exactly what your inner command center broadcasts. And reality, which is always listening, delivers experiences that match that identity perfectly. But the moment you shift that core identity, the moment you reprogram your command center to broadcast from the frequency of "I am the one who receives," everything in your external world begins reorganizing to match that new signal. This is not metaphor. This is not spiritual fluff. This is the actual mechanism behind every financial transformation that's ever happened to anyone. The people who seem to effortlessly attract money aren't doing anything magical. They've simply aligned their inner command center with the identity of someone who receives, and their outer world reflects that alignment naturally. And this is precisely why the morning matters so much, because there's a specific time when your command center is most open to reprogramming. Comment below, "I am the receiver," because speaking this identity publicly reinforces the signal your inner command center is broadcasting to reality. Your inner command center, This mechanism that governs your entire financial reality has a very specific language it responds to. And here's what's fascinating. It doesn't respond to force. You can't push it or pressure it into changing. It doesn't respond to fear or anxiety or desperation. All of those energies actually reinforce the old pattern rather than creating a new one. It doesn't even respond to frantic effort or endless action. You can work yourself to exhaustion and still not shift what your command center is broadcasting. The only language it understands, the only signal that actually reprograms it, is identity. This is why 3 incredibly simple words can completely alter the direction of money in your life when years of complicated techniques haven't moved the needle at all. Because these words aren't trying to force anything. They're not coming from a place of fear or lack. They're not desperate affirmations you're repeating while hoping they'll eventually work. These 3 words do something entirely different. They make you feel different. And when you feel different, even for just a few moments, your identity begins to shift at a level your conscious mind can't control. That shift in identity is what your command center recognizes and responds to immediately. Florence Scovel Shinn understood this law with perfect clarity. The right words don't just sound different. They don't just create a temporary mood boost. They actually make you feel different at the identity level. And once you feel different, once that emotional shift happens in your body, your identity has no choice but to transform. It's not something you have to force or manufacture. It's a natural consequence of the feeling. And here's where it gets really powerful. Once your identity shifts, once you genuinely embody a new version of yourself even briefly, reality must follow. Not might follow. Not could follow if you're lucky. Must follow. That's the law Shinn taught throughout her entire body of work. And it's not just philosophy. It's an actual operating principle of consciousness that's functioning in your body right now, in this very moment, as you listen to these words. Your cells are responding. Your subconscious is listening. Your command center is beginning to recalibrate itself around this new understanding. You're not the same person who started watching this video. Something has already shifted, and that shift is going to continue, deepening as we move forward. The beauty of this law is its simplicity. You don't need to understand quantum physics. You don't need to study ancient texts for years. You don't need special training or unique abilities. You simply need to grasp this one principle and apply it with consistency. When you change how you feel about who you are, reality changes what it delivers to you. It's automatic. It's inevitable. It's already in motion. And this brings us to the precise moment when this transformation can happen most powerfully, most effortlessly, with the least resistance. Type in the comments, "My identity is shifting," because naming the transformation as it happens anchors it deeper into your consciousness than silent observation ever could. There's a loop that most people are trapped in without even realizing it. They wake up every day living in the state of, "I don't have." They look at their bank account and feel the familiar anxiety. They think about their bills and feel the familiar tension. They imagine their future and feel the familiar uncertainty. And then, from that place of lack, from that emotional state of not enough, they try to speak abundance. They try to affirm wealth. They try to visualize prosperity. But here's the problem. They're vibrating with the emotional memory of scarcity while speaking words of abundance. And those two frequencies cancel each other out completely. Their inner mechanism, that command center we talked about, stays locked in the same pattern because the identity underneath all those words hasn't actually changed. They're still identifying as someone who doesn't have, someone who's trying to get, someone who's hoping things will finally shift. And so the loop continues. Same thoughts, same feelings, same decisions, same results. Month after month, year after year. The pattern repeats because the core identity never transforms. But you are stepping out of that loop right now. Not tomorrow. Not when conditions improve. Right now, in this moment, as you absorb these words and feel the shift happening inside you. Because you're beginning to understand something crucial. Money doesn't move according to outer struggle. It doesn't matter how many hours you work, or how hard you push, or how much you sacrifice. Those things might create temporary results, but they don't create lasting transformation. Money moves according to inner alignment. When your internal state matches the frequency of receiving, money flows naturally. When there's misalignment, when you're internally identified with lack while externally chasing abundance, money stays just out of reach no matter what you do. This is why the 3 words you're about to fully embrace are so powerful, and why the morning is the sacred time to speak them. When you say these words first thing in the morning, you're not reciting a mantra. You're not performing a ritual or going through empty motions. You're doing something far more significant. You're triggering your inner mechanism. You're issuing a direct command to your subconscious. You're telling your command center to broadcast from a completely different frequency. And in that moment, you shift from wanting to receiving, from hoping to knowing, from trying to being. That shift, that movement from one state to another, is what breaks the loop permanently. It's what creates the opening for money to flow in ways you couldn't have planned or predicted. And the reason morning works so powerfully for this transformation has everything to do with how your brain operates in those first few minutes after waking. Leave a comment. I'm breaking the loop. Because declaring it publicly creates a level of commitment that private thoughts alone cannot generate. Think back over your financial history for a moment. Every single decision you've ever made with money, every opportunity you said yes or no to, every risk you took or avoided, every moment of hesitation or boldness, all of it was formed from the identity you were embodying at that specific moment. When you were identifying as someone who couldn't afford it, you made decisions from that place. When you were identifying as someone who always struggles, you noticed evidence that confirmed that story. When you were identifying as someone unworthy of wealth, you unconsciously sabotaged opportunities that could have changed everything. But here's the revelation that changes your entire trajectory. Change the identity, and everything changes. Not just your thoughts, not just your feelings, everything. Your decisions shift, your perception shifts, the opportunities you notice shift, the actions you take shift, the people you attract shift, the timing of events shifts. It's like you're suddenly operating in a completely different reality, even though the external world hasn't changed yet. You've changed, and because you've changed, the world begins reorganizing itself around your new identity. This is the invisible mechanism at work. Most people think they need to see evidence before they can believe, before they can step into a new identity. They're waiting for their bank account to prove that they're abundant before they'll allow themselves to feel abundant. But that's backwards. The invisible mechanism doesn't need evidence to activate. It doesn't wait for permission from your circumstances. It creates the evidence. It generates the proof from within. Your new identity becomes the cause, and the external changes become the effect. And this is exactly why those 3 words are designed the way they are. They're not complicated. They're not elaborate. They're simple, direct, and incredibly precise. Because they bypass all the mental resistance that usually keeps you stuck. They bypass the doubt that says, "But I don't see any money yet." They bypass the fear that whispers, "What if this doesn't work?" They bypass all of that surface-level noise and go straight to the deepest part of you, the part that responds to identity-level commands without questioning, without analyzing, without needing proof first. When you speak these words in the morning, you're not trying to convince yourself of anything. You're not hoping they'll magically attract money. You're issuing a command to your subconscious, and your subconscious responds instantly by beginning to create evidence that matches the identity you've just claimed. It starts with subtle shifts in how you feel. Then it moves to changes in how you think. Then it manifests as different decisions you make throughout the day. And finally, it appears as external opportunities, money, and circumstances that seem to arrive out of nowhere. But there's a specific reason why morning is the most powerful time for this transformation to take root. And understanding this timing multiplies the effectiveness of everything we've talked about so far. Comment: identity creates evidence. Because stating this principle publicly strengthens your subconscious acceptance of how the mechanism actually operates. Every single morning, there's a window of opportunity that most people completely miss because they're not even aware it exists. It happens in those first few moments after you open your eyes, before your mind fully speeds up, before the mental chatter begins, before you remember yesterday's problems, before the world starts demanding your attention and energy. In that brief, sacred window, something remarkable is available to you. Your awareness hasn't yet locked into who you are for the day. Your identity is still fluid, still malleable, like soft clay that hasn't hardened yet. And in that state of fluidity, you have the power to shape yourself in ways that become nearly impossible once the day fully begins. Florence Scovel Shinn understood this with crystal clarity. She recognized that those early moments after waking are not ordinary moments. They're the bridge between your inner world and your outer experience. They're the doorway between imagination and reality. They're the space where what you claim internally has the most direct path to manifesting externally. And the state you choose to embody in that moment, the identity you step into before anything else pulls at you, becomes the silent architect of your entire day. It sets the tone. It establishes the frequency. It determines what you notice, how you respond, and what opportunities appear in your path. This is why people who understand this principle guard their mornings so carefully. They know that whoever they decide to be in those first moments is who they'll tend to be for the rest of the day. If they wake up and immediately check their phone, scrolling through problems and demands and other people's energy, they've just handed their identity over to external forces. They're letting the world tell them who to be. But if they wake up and intentionally claim their identity before anything else happens, if they speak those 3 words into that fluid state, they're programming themselves from the inside out. Your brain in those morning moments is in a unique state. The analytical mind hasn't fully activated yet. The critical voice that says, "But this isn't realistic," is still quiet. The emotional memories of past failures haven't fully loaded. You're in what could be called a hypnagogic state, where your subconscious is incredibly receptive to new programming. And when you speak your 3 words into that receptive state, they land differently than they would at any other time of day. They bypass the usual filters and resistance and go straight into the command center we talked about earlier. This is the behind-the-scenes mechanics of how transformation actually happens. It's not random. It's not luck. It's understanding the specific moments when your consciousness is most open to change and using those moments with intention and precision. Write in the comments, "I claim my mornings," because the act of declaring ownership over this sacred time reinforces your commitment to the transformation that happens there. The reason the 3 words must be spoken in the morning isn't just a nice suggestion or a convenient time to fit them in. There's actual science and spiritual wisdom behind this timing. In those early moments after waking, you are at your most receptive state. Your inner mechanism, that command center we've been talking about, is completely open. Your identity hasn't solidified yet into the familiar patterns of yesterday. Your subconscious is alert, listening with full attention, preparing the emotional blueprint that will guide your entire day. This is when programming happens most effectively, most effortlessly, with the least resistance. But here's what's tragic. Most people completely waste this sacred window. They spend their first conscious moments doing the exact opposite of what would serve them. They reach for their phones before their feet even touch the floor. They immediately plug back into yesterday's identity, scrolling through messages and emails and news that triggers the same familiar emotions. They start remembering all the things they lack, all the problems waiting for them, all the reasons to feel anxious or overwhelmed. They replay yesterday's fears, yesterday's doubts, yesterday's limitations. And in doing so, they slip right back into the same emotional signature they've been carrying for months or years. Then they wonder why nothing ever changes. They wonder why they keep experiencing the same financial patterns, the same struggles, the same frustrations. But the answer is simple. they're choosing the same identity every single morning. They're re-entering the same state before the day even begins. Their mornings are on autopilot, and because their mornings are on autopilot, their lives are on autopilot. The pattern perpetuates itself without them even realizing they have a choice. You're learning a completely different way, a way that recognizes the morning for what it truly is, the most powerful moment of transformation available to you every single day. When you understand that the first few minutes after waking determine the trajectory of everything that follows, you stop treating your morning casually. You stop letting external forces dictate who you're going to be. Instead, you take those few precious moments to deliberately, intentionally, consciously step into the identity of someone who receives. And here's what happens when you do this consistently. Your subconscious begins to expect it. It starts waiting for that morning instruction, that identity command. And as it receives the same message day after day, the new identity begins to solidify. What felt like a stretch at first starts feeling natural. What required effort initially becomes automatic. And your entire day begins unfolding from this foundation of receiving rather than the old foundation of lacking. The impact of this simple shift ripples through every decision, every interaction, every opportunity that presents itself throughout your day, and the results become undeniable. Drop a comment. My mornings are sacred, because naming this truth publicly elevates the importance of this practice in your own consciousness. When you first open your eyes in the morning, you're in what Florence Scovel Shinn called the state of pure imagination. This is such a crucial concept to understand, because it explains why morning has such transformative power. In that state, right at the edge of sleep and wakefulness, you're not yet bound by the chains of memory. You're not yet locked into yesterday's limitations. You haven't yet stepped back into the costume of your old identity. You're essentially a blank canvas, completely available and open, ready to receive whatever impression you choose to imprint upon yourself. This is the moment of maximum possibility, before your logical mind fully boots up and starts running its familiar programs, before the voice of doubt reminds you of all the reasons things can't change, before the weight of your history settles back onto your shoulders. In that pure state, you have direct access to your subconscious without all the usual interference and resistance. You're open in a way that simply isn't available later in the day when all your defenses are up and all your patterns are active. And this is precisely why the 3 deliberate words work so powerfully when spoken in this state. They imprint your financial identity directly onto that blank canvas before your logical mind has a chance to argue or resist. Think about it. Your old beliefs about money, all those deep-seated programs about scarcity and limitation and people like me don't have wealth, those beliefs aren't fully awake yet in those first moments. They're still sleeping. And while they're sleeping, you can slip past them entirely. You can plant a completely new seed without triggering all the old defense mechanisms that usually keep you stuck. The 3 words bypass the gatekeeper. They go straight into your subconscious and plant themselves there before the noise of the day begins. And once that seed is planted, once it's rooted in your consciousness from that pure state, it begins growing throughout the day. You might not consciously notice it at first, but it's working beneath the surface. It's influencing your thoughts. It's shaping your perceptions. It's guiding your decisions. It's attracting circumstances that match the identity you claimed in that morning moment. This is how transformation happens at the deepest level, not through force or struggle or trying to override your resistance, but through strategic timing, planting the right seed at the right moment when your consciousness is most fertile and receptive. And as that seed grows throughout the day, it produces fruit in the form of insights, opportunities, synchronicities, and yes, money flowing into your life from unexpected sources. The journey from that morning seed to actual financial results follows a very specific pattern, and understanding this pattern helps you recognize the signs that the process is working. Comment below. The seed is planted. because declaring this publicly acknowledges the transformation happening beneath the surface, strengthening its growth. When you activate this new state first thing in the morning, when you claim your identity as someone who receives before anything else happens, something remarkable begins to unfold. Florence Scovel Shinn called it the bridge of incidents. It's this mysterious but absolutely reliable sequence of events that starts organizing itself around your new identity. Money doesn't just magically appear in your bank account, though sometimes it does. More often, what happens is that you start making different choices throughout your day. Small decisions that seem insignificant in the moment, but lead to significant outcomes. You recognize opportunities that were always there, but that you were previously blind to because your old identity wasn't tuned to that frequency. You follow impulses that you would have normally ignored or dismissed as unrealistic. You have conversations you wouldn't have had before. You take actions that feel aligned in a way your old self wouldn't have understood. And all of these small shifts, these tiny course corrections guided by your new identity, create a bridge that carries you from where you were to where you want to be. The bridge builds itself naturally, one incident at a time, each one perfectly timed, each one leading naturally to the next. This is the hidden truth behind every financial breakthrough that's ever looked like luck or coincidence. It wasn't random. It was the bridge of incidents responding to an identity shift that happened in someone's consciousness. And this is exactly what's available to you. When you understand that your morning is not just the start of your day, your morning is the start of your reality. Every single morning, you have the power to choose what reality you're going to experience before the world has any chance to influence you, before external circumstances can tell you who you're supposed to be, before yesterday's patterns can reassert themselves. This is profound when you really let it sink in. You're not at the mercy of your circumstances. You're not trapped by your history. You're not limited by what happened yesterday or last week or last year. Every morning presents you with a completely fresh opportunity to decide who you are, and once you make that decision with clarity and feeling, reality has no choice but to conform to it. Your mornings are no longer accidental. They're no longer something that just happens to you while you're barely conscious. They become deliberate, intentional, sacred moments where you consciously architect the reality you're about to experience. And when you approach your mornings this way consistently, when you speak those 3 words with genuine feeling every single morning, the transformation accelerates. What might have taken years to shift can happen in weeks or even days because you're working with the fundamental mechanism of reality itself. But now, it's time to reveal the actual words, the 3 simple words that contain all of this power and activate this entire process. Type in the comments, I choose my reality, because this declaration acknowledges your role as the conscious creator of your experience, not a passive recipient of circumstances. So here we are. After all this build-up, after all this understanding of how identity shapes reality and how your morning determines everything that follows, it's time to reveal the 3 words that activate this entire transformation. And I want you to receive them not as just another affirmation to add to your collection, but as the key that unlocks everything we've been talking about. The words are beautifully simple, crystal clear, direct, and unapologetically powerful. They are, I am receiving. Say them silently to yourself right now. I am receiving. Let them echo inside you for a moment. Feel how they land in your body, in your chest, in your awareness. Notice that they don't sound like a hope. They don't feel like a request you're making to the universe. They're not a wish or a dream or a someday possibility. They land as a declaration of identity, a statement of what is already true, a claim about who you are in this exact moment. These 3 words carry absolutely no desperation. There's no sense of reaching for something far away. There's no energy of, one day when I finally get there. Everything about them is rooted in the now, in certainty, in present tense identity. When you say I, you're speaking as the self, the source, the creative power at the center of your existence. When you say am, you're anchoring everything in the present moment, The only moment where transformation actually happens, the only moment that actually exists. And when you say receiving, you're not talking about something you're trying to do or hoping to achieve. You're describing a state of being. You're actively allowing, actively welcoming, actively drawing in what's already moving toward you. This is the brilliance of these 3 words. They completely collapse the distance between you and abundance. They remove the gap between where you are and where you want to be. They don't acknowledge lack. They don't recognize scarcity. They simply state the truth of who you are, someone who receives. And when you speak this truth into that morning state of pure imagination, when you imprint these words onto your consciousness before your logical mind wakes up to argue, something shifts at the deepest level of your being. Your subconscious hears this declaration and immediately begins reorganizing everything to match it. Your energy changes, your perception changes, your decisions change. And as we've established, when those internal shifts happen, external reality must follow. It's law. It's not something you hope for. It's something you activate through the simple act of claiming your identity with these 3 precise words. Now, let me show you exactly how to use these words for maximum impact, because it's not just about saying them, it's about how you say them and what you do. Immediately after, leave a comment. I am receiving. And as you type those words, feel the truth of them settling deeper into your consciousness with every letter. When you speak these words in the morning, especially in those first soft, quiet seconds between sleep and thought, when your consciousness is still hovering in that liminal space, you're doing something far more significant than most people realize. You're activating the exact financial identity that Florence Scovel Shinn described throughout her teachings. In that moment, you're not pretending to be someone you're not. You're not playing a role or faking confidence. You're genuinely becoming the version of yourself who expects money to flow naturally, the version who's comfortable with abundance, the version who feels completely aligned with wealth. And that version, once activated, starts running the show for the rest of your day. This activation creates a 3-stage effect that unfolds with remarkable consistency once you start paying attention to it. The first thing you'll notice is emotional. It's subtle at first, but unmistakable. There's a quiet warmth that spreads through your body, a gentle loosening of all that internal resistance you've been carrying around money. That tight, anxious feeling in your chest when you think about finances begins to dissolve. You feel lighter, more open, more available to receive. This emotional shift is the foundation of everything else that follows, because as we've established, your emotional state is what your subconscious responds to most powerfully. Then comes the mental shift, and this is where things start getting really interesting. Your inner dialogue begins to change. That critical voice that's always pointing out what you don't have, what you can't afford, why things won't work out, it starts to soften. It doesn't disappear completely, but it loses its grip on you. At the same time, your attention sharpens. You start noticing things you would have completely overlooked before. Opportunities that were always there but invisible to your old identity suddenly become obvious. Ideas drop into your mind with clarity and precision. Your thinking becomes more expansive, more creative, more solution-focused instead of problem-focused. And then, sometimes within hours, sometimes within days, the external movement begins. This is the stage most people are waiting for, but it only comes after the emotional and mental shifts have already happened. You might receive an unexpected message from someone offering you work. A refund you'd forgotten about shows up. An idea comes to you that, when you act on it, generates income. An opportunity appears that feels perfectly timed. Small confirmations start arriving that whisper the same message back to you. You are receiving. You claimed it in the morning, and now reality is confirming what you declared. Understanding this 3-stage progression keeps you from getting discouraged if money doesn't instantly appear the first morning you speak the words, because you'll recognize that the process has already begun the moment you feel that emotional shift. Comment: the process has begun. because acknowledging where you are in this journey strengthens your trust in the unfolding transformation. Here's what most people completely misunderstand about this entire process. When you say, "I am receiving," in that morning state, you're not describing something that's already happening in your external reality. You're not looking at your bank account and reporting on what you see. You're doing something far more powerful than that. You're issuing a direct instruction to your subconscious mind to generate a reality that matches the identity you're claiming. And once that instruction is imprinted deeply enough, once it settles into your subconscious as truth rather than wishful thinking, it begins working on your behalf with what can only be described as supernatural precision. Your subconscious doesn't question the instruction. It doesn't say, "But that's not true yet," or "Where's the evidence?" It simply receives the identity command and immediately starts orchestrating circumstances, thoughts, impulses, and opportunities that align with that identity. This is identity hardening into evidence. What begins as an internal claim gradually solidifies into external proof, and that proof then reinforces the identity, which generates more evidence, creating an upward spiral of receiving. Florence Scovel Shinn understood this mechanism perfectly, and she taught it through a precise formula that, once you grasp it, demystifies the entire manifestation process. The formula is beautifully simple. State, then impression, then evidence. Everything begins with the state you consciously assume. That morning moment when you claim, "I am receiving," you're choosing a state, stepping into an identity, occupying a frequency. That's the first stage, and it's entirely within your control. You don't need permission. You don't need proof. You simply choose the state. Once you've chosen the state and spoken it with feeling, the second stage happens automatically. Your subconscious absorbs the impression. It takes that identity declaration and begins imprinting it into your deeper consciousness. This isn't something you have to force or monitor or worry about. It happens naturally, the same way your body digests food without you having to consciously direct the process. The impression sinks in, layer by layer, repetition by repetition, until it becomes part of your operating system. And then, inevitably, the third stage arrives. Evidence begins appearing in your physical world. External circumstances start shifting to match your internal state. This evidence might be small at first, easy to dismiss if you're not paying attention. But as your internal shift solidifies, as that identity impression deepens through consistent morning practice, the evidence becomes undeniable. Money flows in. Opportunities appear. The right people show up. Everything starts working with an ease that your old identity could never have experienced. The beauty of understanding this formula is that you stop putting pressure on the external world to change instantly, and instead, you focus on what you actually have control over, which is the state you choose each morning. Right below, state, impression, evidence. Speaking this formula aloud anchors its truth into your awareness and activates your understanding of how transformation actually unfolds. This is where most people sabotage themselves without even realizing it. They're waiting for proof before they'll fully accept the identity. They're telling themselves, "I'll believe I'm someone who receives when I actually see money showing up consistently." But that approach keeps them trapped forever because they're demanding that evidence appear first. And as we've established throughout this entire journey, that's completely backwards. Florence Scovel Shinn taught the exact opposite principle. Identity creates proof, always, without exception, never the other way around. The evidence doesn't show up randomly or by chance. It shows up specifically because your inner state has solidified enough to generate it. Your subconscious, once it fully accepts the identity you've been claiming each morning, begins guiding you with quiet precision toward the people, opportunities, and circumstances that match who you've become. You don't have to figure out how it's going to happen. You don't have to map out the entire path. You simply maintain the state, trust the process, and follow the impulses that arise naturally as your internal guidance system recalibrates around your new identity. And here's what I want you to understand right now, in this moment. You are already inside the process. This isn't something that's going to start tomorrow or next week when you begin implementing everything you've learned. It has already begun. The moment you started watching this video, something shifted in your inner world. The moment you heard those 3 words and felt them land differently than any affirmation you've heard before, your consciousness expanded. The moment you recognized yourself as someone who receives rather than someone who chases, your identity transformed. And your outer world is already responding to that transformation, even if you can't see all the evidence yet. What happens now is that you take this shift and stabilize it. You don't let it be a temporary insight that fades when you close this video. You lock it in. You make it your default state, your baseline, your natural way of being. And that's exactly what the practice ahead is designed to do. For the next period of time, you're going to deliberately reinforce this identity every single morning, speaking those 3 words into that receptive state, feeling the truth of them deepen with each repetition, allowing the impression to sink so deep into your subconscious that receiving becomes as natural and effortless as breathing. When that happens, when this identity becomes who you simply are rather than who you're trying to become, money flows to you with the same ease and consistency as breath moving through your lungs. No force, no struggle, no doubt. Just natural, inevitable receiving. But there's a specific way to practice these 3 words that multiplies their effectiveness exponentially, and understanding this approach makes all the difference. Drop a comment. The shift has already happened, because acknowledging this truth publicly cements your awareness that you're not waiting for transformation. You're already living it. So here we are, at the end of this journey together. If you've made it all the way to this point, that tells me something important about you. You're not just casually browsing. You're not looking for quick fixes or magic solutions. You're someone who's genuinely ready for this shift, someone who recognizes truth when you hear it, someone who's willing to do what it takes to transform your relationship with money from the inside out. And if that describes you, I'd love for you to subscribe to this channel, because what we're building here goes far deeper than surface-level motivation. Every video I create is designed to give you real tools, real understanding, real pathways to transformation that actually work. This isn't about hype. It's about substance. And if today's message resonated with you, there's so much more waiting for you here. Before you go, leave me a comment and just say, "This message was meant for me." I love seeing who's part of this community, who's walking this path, who's choosing a different way of being in the world. Your comment isn't just for me, it's a declaration to yourself and to the universe that you're stepping into this new identity fully. And if this video shifted something inside you, if you felt that quiet click of recognition as these truths landed, go ahead and hit that like button. It helps this message reach more people who need to hear it, and it signals to your own subconscious that what you experienced here matters. Now, there's a video right here that takes this understanding even deeper. It complements everything we've talked about today, and honestly, it's the perfect next step for where you are right now. Click and continue with me over there. Let's keep this transformation moving. I'll see you in the next one.